This video documents our annual backpacking trip. This year's trip was to Idaho's Sawtooth Wilderness. We began on September 5th, 2019, and we're out for 7 days over 5 nights. The night before our hike, we stayed in the town of Stanley, Idaho, which is at the foothills of the Sawtooth Wilderness. Our first day of the hike, we went into the Tin Cup trailhead and planned to hike up to Alice Lake. From the trailhead, we passed Pettit Lake as we walked about a mile to get to the official start of the Sawtooth Wilderness area. It was a steady climb for about 6.5 miles through the wilderness up in the mountains to reach Alice Lake. About a 1,600-foot climb for our first day. Lots of pretty mountains and flowers along the way as we were passing some water, smaller lakes as we made our way to the much bigger Alice Lake where we planned to spend our first night camping. Great views of Alice Lake that set at about 8,600 feet. Very pretty looking around the lake and looking back at our campsite that we had for camp night number 1. So day 2 began with our plan to head over toward Toxaway Lake and then over to Edna Lake from there. Should be about a 10-mile day, and we had 2 passes to go over, and that was our general plan. Another gorgeous day. The weather was perfect, and we started out again first thing in the morning, a big climb up, heading over to Toxaway Lake. The view coming up the first pass was just stunning as we were looking over at the other side where we're going to be heading next, and eventually down to Toxaway Lake. But looking back where we just came, down to Twin Lakes, it was just a stunning view from, again, the top of this pass. As we came down the pass through the drainage, there was some very beautiful waterfalls and then some evidence of even avalanches from the winter snows, as some of the trees were just snapped off about midway, all going in one direction from, I guess, the snowfall. We finally made it to Toxaway Lake. Again, another very beautiful lake, and that took us to the trail intersection for Edna Lake, which required us to go over our second pass for the day and straight up this mountain. Also, as our first view of some darker skies coming from behind the mountains, so foreshadowing some potential bad weather coming soon. Great views of Toxaway Lake as we climbed up the pass. Really beautiful hike. Of course, as we got closer to the top of the pass, the clouds got darker and we start hearing our first bits of thunder. So we stopped and put our raincoats on and knew that rain would probably be coming soon. It was only when we got to the actual pass we could see through the other side and see the dark clouds of the approaching thunderstorm that was pretty close to hitting us. At that point, we just started to double time it down the pass, trying to get to some trees because we didn't want to be stuck, high up on the mountain in the midst of a thunderstorm.
Those camper money well spent. Yeah. What are those?
Wait out the rainstorm. All donned in our rain gear and hiding in the trees, hoping the thunder and lightning keep moving away. And there's the remnants of the hail. Not quite. Not quite gone yet.
Not over yet.
So we made it down to Edna Lake to dry out. We pretty much the whole way down it was raining, and the trail was nothing but a big stream of water from all the rain, that storm that just passed over. So we pretty much were just glad to get somewhere to dry out, and we had a perfect camping spot right here on Edna Lake. A lot of rocks and it was in full sun, which we could kind of spread all our stuff out. And of course, it cleared up, and it was a beautiful afternoon at that point. And certainly, we decided to call it a day at that point. View of Edna Lake from our campsite. Edna Lake at about 8,400 feet. Day 3, here we go.
Woohoo! Beautiful. Look at the nice reflection off the lake. Yeah, gorgeous.
So day 3's plan was to continue hiking up toward Hidden Lake, and then on up over the Kramer Divide, which is a pretty good big climb, and then down on the other side, down to the Kramer Lakes, and then continue on somewhere toward Redfish Lake, until we could find a camping spot somewhere near that area. Finally made it to the top of the Kramer Divide. As we look over to the other side, it's just a beautiful landscape of the mountains and the rock around. You can really get a sense of the Sawtooth Mountains and why they get their name. And then looking off into the distance, you could really start seeing the forest as you got lower down in elevation, which is where we would be heading next. There were a lot of switchbacks to get us down from the Kramer Divide all the way down the drainage that would ultimately get us to the Kramer Lakes. So day 3, we just came over Kramer Divide, and that was a pretty big hike, but this is a pretty stunning look down on the other side going into this valley. So really enjoyable hike. All good. is Upper Kramer Lake, looking back at the pass that we just came down, hiked down, and now we're kind of heading to be heading past Middle Kramer Lake and then Lower Kramer Lake. This is Middle Kramer Lake. We made camp along the Redfish Lake Creek, just above this creek area. Very beautiful, and wanted to get as close as we could to Redfish Lake, as the next day we knew that rain was coming in. Day 4, we woke up to rain as expected. We didn't do a lot of filming or videoing on this day just because of the rain. We made our way down to Redfish Lake campground, and then from there we hiked about 5.5 miles along this lake over to Redfish Lodge, and it was a beautiful hike and up on the ridge. Unfortunately, we really couldn't see the lake down below because the clouds were so low and it was raining the whole time. So we pretty much spent the afternoon at the lodge, which was great that we were able to do that, because we were able to eat at the lodge and just have a place to be outside the rain. And then at the end of the day, we took the shuttle boat back across the lake to the campground where we spent the night. Day 5, we woke up. It was a beautiful day. The rain had finally stopped. The plan was to take the shuttle boat back across the lake and get a ride back to our car. The reason we changed our plan to not hike out of Redfish Lake across in the direction that we had planned to go is we had ran into several different individuals who had told us the trail that from where we were to where we were headed was not maintained, and it was going to be a miserable slog to go that direction. So we decided, based on the weather, to get back to the car and then try to go to a different area. We actually ended up getting off the trail this day and for one night because of the weather that was planned to come in. So day 6, we were back on trail. We drove to another trailhead, the Iron Creek trailhead, and the plan was to head up to Sawtooth Lake and spend the night and explore that area and head back out the next day. Another beautiful hike up to Sawtooth Lake. It's about a 5.5 mile hike and about a 1,700 foot elevation gain, taking us up to Sawtooth Lake at about 8,400 feet. We had a great camping spot in the rocks perched just above the lake, and gave us great views all the way around of the whole region and the lake area. Lots of sun. It was definitely noticeably cooler when the sun wasn't there, so we know it's getting colder up in this area. As it got closer to evening and the clouds came over, the wind picked up. It got cold pretty quick, so we didn't stay up very long because it was pretty chilly. The next morning we woke up to, it had been raining every night, but that changed to snow at some point during the night. We woke up to a pretty heavy layer of wet snow on our tents and pretty much everything. So we pretty much just packed it up and decided to hit the trail so that we could kind of get out of the wet snow. The mountains were very pretty with the snow. After we kind of went down a couple 100 feet or so, the snow just turned to straight rain, and it rained pretty much, I'd say, most of the way out on our hike. But it wasn't too bad as we were coming down for our last trip out. We made it back to Stanley for some food, and this was a quick look back at the mountains from Stanley, the snow in the mountains. Very beautiful. Had some great food in Stanley, and then we dried out, got everything dried, and pretty much at that point called it the end of a wonderful trip into the Sawtooth Wilderness in Idaho. Till next year.